Our guest today serves as in dual role as president of Paramount Television Studios and at Paramount Plus. As president of the TV studios, she oversees global shows for buyers across multiple platforms. And at Paramount Plus, her primary responsibility is to shepherd original series and formulate programming strategy for the streaming platform. Her shows are a hit with audience and Emmy voters alike. My name is Tova Laiter, and on behalf of the students of the New York Film Academy, we are honored to welcome the talented Nicole Clemens to our Q&A.
Should I turn my video on?
And where's Nicole?
Oh, yeah. Okay, hi.
Hi, Nicole.
Hi,
First,
Tova.
congratulations of the first win of the season of Star Trek win the other day, right?
Thank you. Yes.
So that's nice. And second, we love all your shows. And I particularly love The Offer, next explain later, and Station 11. We did the Q&A here with Patrick Somerville, which was fantastic. We want to ask you a lot of questions about those shows, but first I want to know, how did you start in the business?
Well, I did not know anybody in the business. I didn't grow up in the business, and I had I originally thought that I wanted to do like Entertainment Tonight, kind of like PM Magazine. That was a show that was around when I was that age, and so I went to school at San Francisco State and studied Augie Coppola. Like, I recognized the name Coppola, ironically, funny about The Offer. And then, they had and I knew I wanted to be in TV at the time. And so I did that. And I was feeling really frustrated. I'll be honest. I was feeling like the curriculum was not geared towards, it felt very dated. I was pushing around a Grass Valley switcher from like the 50s and just, it was not, it was a lot of sort of who invented the radio kind of thing. And I was super anxious and super driven that there was not going to be enough, and there weren't going to be enough jobs, and it was impacted. And so I knew someone who knew someone who knew someone in the business. So I flew down to meet them, and they said, you really just need to be here. You need to be in LA, whether you're cocktail waitressing or temping. And so I gave notice that night, and I dropped out of school telling myself that I was going to finish. I was a junior, and I did never finish. So, that's not a great story to tell university, but it's the truth. I did tell myself I was going to finish, but I started working and I never stopped. And I started temping, and I had a few temp jobs. And my first temp job that turned into a real job was at Spelling Television. And I was there for 4 years. And one of the things I always say when I talk to people is that when you're getting into the business, you really have to think about your class, because this is a marathon, not a sprint. And you will grow up with these people in the business. I've been doing this for 32 years now. And Jen Salke and I, Jen runs Amazon, we were assistants together at Spelling. And we were both promoted within months of each other. Of course, she was promoted 3 months before me. And I literally was like having a heart attack that it was taking so long for me. But eventually it happened. You get across the line. And then from Spelling, I went to run a company for a director back when pilot directors were a thing. And pilot directors were the kings of television, because every show was a pilot. There was an only broadcast, and there were network seasons. And Rod Holcomb had just done the pilot for ER. So he was given a deal at Warner Brothers. So we formed a company, and I produced with him. And, and again, like, I met John Landgraf, who is, I assume everybody knows who these people are. If not, just tell me and I'll see you. He's the
I know, but the student don't know.
CEO of FX. And the sort of that people refer to him as the mayor of television. He's the guy who always predicting peak TV. If you Google him, it's like, this time, this is going to be the peak here. He was my vice president of a show of a pilot that we were producing. And then later we would work together, and he would, so that just shows you how all this happens. David Nevins, who I work with now, at the time was running drama for NBC. So we were all there doing it at the same time. From there, I was recruited to be an agent at ICM. Again, not the norm. Usually I didn't even know that you had a 4-year college requirement to go to an agency, but I was recruited to join And you do that. And that's a requirement to be an assistant at an agency, to then work on a desk for, how many ever years it takes to get promoted, which is a great route, and a route that I recommend for most people. But I was recruited as an agent, and I was founded the life rights department. So I was essentially like an in-house producer who I woke up every day looking for, reading periodicals and looking at new shows and flying to Tulsa, Oklahoma to get the Nazi debutantes life rights. I was actually competing against Ari Emanuel. We were both on the plane going to get this person, and in a Chanel suit with a swastika in Tulsa. I mean, the whole thing was like surreal. And so she was like a Donnie Brasco type, actually. Then I went into the book department there, and I sold film and television rights to books. Again, very producerial. You read it, you figure out what it is, you go to sell it, you package it. I used to say agenting is just being a producer with a steady paycheck if you're really good at it, in my opinion. And so my fear at first was that you were just a used car salesman. But I think the really good agents and the agents I modeled myself after were the ones that were putting things together. And then there was a big, if you know your Hollywood history, Jim Wyatt left ICM. ICM doesn't exist anymore, which is insane to me, and went to William Morris, and there was a big gaping hole. And Jeff Berg asked me to come to be a film agent. And so I jumped over to film from TV. And then I was at ICM for 16 years and ended up running the lit department and representing writers, directors, and actors, and of all, like Sam Jackson and Halle Berry, and on the talent side. And I don't even remember who my clients are anymore because it's been now 10 years. But,
yeah,
decent amount of directors and writers. And then we took that company private, and I was a partner, and I felt like I was going to wait for a liquidity event, and in 10 years. Right. And I thought, okay, well then at the time I was not as old as I am now, but I thought that I was like, well, if I don't do this, this is going to be it. And I loved being an agent, but what was happening in television at the time, Netflix hadn't even come into the picture yet, but it was The Shield. It was Breaking Bad. It was, Shield a little earlier, but Breaking Bad, that era of just excellent television. And I felt like all that was happening in film was IP. Like I was calling clients and saying, hey, they're remaking Mr. Ed at Fox 2000. Don't shoot the messenger. It's the best job over there. Blah. I was making deals for Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. And I was like, I don't even want to go to these premieres. Now I would go with my children. And the straw that broke the camel's back was Lego at Warner Brothers. I was like, what is happening? Meanwhile, favorite film of the year. So I wanted to go make like
very interesting, because Sherry Lansing told a similar story when she decided to leave Paramount.
Oh, really? That's so fun.
When they told her what publicity, basically marketing, said to her, yeah, you can throw some money fixing, this IP movie, but it's not going to make any difference whether it's good or not. It's all about marketing. And she said, okay, time to go.
Time to go. Exactly.
Yeah,
exactly. Well, I felt like the best premium cable at the time, HBO, FX, Showtime, were doing like the 70s films that made me want to get into TV. They were telling long arcing character journeys. And so I did a very unorthodox thing and quit my job without a job. And ultimately met on a few different things. And I had a few options, and I went to see my old friend, John Landgraf, and said, which of these things should I do? And he was like, no, you should come here and run drama for me. Right. So that was like a huge, and I'll say this will be later down the road for anybody in the room, but I took a 14-year pay cut to do that because I wanted to make a move and change. And it was just, I needed to be happy and interested in what I was doing. And so ultimately it all worked out. I had no idea that it would work out. I just was like, I need to I want to work with these people, and I want to work with these kind of stories. And so I was there for 5 years, and that spanned Atlanta, Better Things, You're the Worst, a bunch of comedies and dramas, Snowfall, Tyrant, Strain, Mayans, all of that. So Kurt Sutter was my client who did Sons of Anarchy, who then became my charge, I guess. So it's a role flip. And then I went to be a producer at Anonymous, and I was loving being a producer and just being, in the dirt. And then an opportunity came up and I got called to, look at opportunity of going to run Paramount Television Studios. And I thought, oh, I don't want to run a studio. That's like the last thing I want to do. And it's turned out to be my absolute favorite job, because a studio in television, you're the buyer, the seller, and you make things. And so it scratches all the itches. And then, so I've been doing that for 4 years, and we make shows for our own owned and operated platforms and channels, Paramount Plus, Showtime, BET, those owned, but we also we have like shows on 13 different third-party platforms and networks. So we do Jack Ryan, we do Jack Reacher, Station 11 was for HBO Max, Made for Love was from HBO Max. We had Defending Jacob at Apple and Home Before Dark at Apple. We're doing Shantaram for Apple, which just came out yesterday, which was a show I was actually executive producing before I went to Paramount. So we get to do a lot that way. And then a year ago, I was asked to come do Paramount Plus. I've really answered your question in way too long-winded of an answer. I'm sorry.
No, because it really shows, the students, many things. One is how relationships are important, and you kind of acquire them at different places and at different things. And basically, and also how you can be an agent and then you can go to development and be an agent, and how those things basically are not contradicted to each other.
Yeah.
Because some people in the program, they only want to be filmmaker, and sometimes nobody wants to be an agent, but, it's a great opportunity for a lot of people to see how it all gets put together. It's really where the industry gets all put together. So I think it was very, very valuable. But what I wanted to ask you is, can you explain to us the different strategies for the Paramount TV studios and Paramount Plus?
Sure. Well, Paramount Television Studios is a studio. So we are a manufacturer. You can think of us that way. We will buy our own material, take IP off the shelf, here have original pitches and scripts from writers. We have deals with writers and directors and producers to farm material. And then we will figure out and determine where the best home is. And that might be on Paramount Plus, which I also oversee that. And so I wear two hats. I'm a buyer and a seller. I also have teams underneath me. So there is a way to do it where it doesn't feel schizophrenic. But not every, a show at Paramount Plus is a very big, broad, inclusive, populous, tentpole popcorn show. Even though our show, and when I say that, I don't mean it's an ABC or an NBC network show. I mean, Mayor of Kingstown was very dark and very gritty as any FX show I worked on, but it was for the entire US. It was not just a coastal show. A lot of other streamers program for New York and LA, a lot of sort of rarefied air, a lot of really narrow kind of niche, which, by the way, can actually be, it can, if it's authentic and it's great, it can actually travel.
You say that Paramount Plus is more than
broader. We're broader. We are. And when I say that, I don't mean shaved off edges like a lot of broadcast television. What I mean is it's propulsive. It feels like an event. The Offer, for example, was an event. Halo, huge IP, huge, big budget, big spectacle. I can't talk. Yes. Spectacle. There's the Trek universe, right? Those are all really, those are big popcorn shows for everybody, right? You have 1883, which is like a beautiful Western. It's a family story, but it's pretty visceral and pretty dark, but it feels like you've gone and seen a film. Yeah. So it's like that they're not all the same type of show. They're all varied, but there is a quality to them that feels like, an event. We're doing Fatal Attraction with Joshua Jackson and Lizzie Kaplan. And anytime you take a title, you want a reason to take it off the shelf. And in this case, and it was funny, I had dinner with Sherry recently. We were talking about this because this was her movie. And I was like, I hope you're okay with me doing this. But, for example, that was a sort of a male gaze version of the story, right? It was like, don't cheat on your wife or bad things are going to happen. And we're doing a sort of a 360 from everybody's point of view, right? Looking at coercion and mental illness and psychosexual drama. And so that, and playing it out over a longer story. So, but it's a big event. It's like great casting, you know, great elements. Not really, you know, in the programmer lane, but in, you know, what makes people feel like, okay, I need to come behind the paywall to see your show. Showtime, also premium subscription. Their shows aren't, I wouldn't say they're just coastal, but they tend to be, all of their stuff is purely adult. Like that, everything that they program is going for that quadrant. And I do think like they'll tackle politics. I think we're like, we don't want to necessarily play in the political landscape. I don't need to get super granular here, but you know what I mean? Like if you think about there's some Venn diagram of shows on Showtime that could be on Paramount Plus, but like Halo was originally developed for Showtime. Man Who Fell to Earth was developed for Paramount Plus, and we flipped them. It's a really good example of Man Who Fell to Earth needed to be on Showtime and Halo needed to be on Paramount Plus, if that makes sense. And then the studio sells to, like I said, Amazon, Apple, Netflix. We have shows on every platform, and people often say, well, how do you decide? And does it just go to you guys first? There are the way that streamers have defined themselves and buyers have defined themselves. It's very rare that it happens occasionally, but it's very rare that you find a show that can go everywhere. So it's really about looking at the show and saying, where can it go? Where do we need it? Where is the best place for us to sell it, whether it's in-house or external, based on, you know, where it has a chance to get made and where does it fit into the ecosystem?
Right. So let me ask you, what determines which of Paramount film titles get to be a series? And are they going to be only on Paramount Plus from now on? Because I know before there was Paramount Plus, you know, went to the different.
Yeah. I think, look, I don't think it's good. I feel like there are, for the most part, and I would say nothing, there's always an exception to every rule. For the most part, legacy IP, you know, The Godfather, the offer is connected to The Godfather because it's about the making of The Godfather, Grease, Fatal Attraction. It would feel slightly criminal to have them be on another platform. That doesn't mean that there might be a lesser known title that is developed in a way that is better for FX than it is for Paramount Plus or Showtime that could do that. But for the most part, I think IP should stay in-house, you know, that kind of franchise IP. But there's always as soon as I say that, you'll be like, Nicole, there's a press release, something going to, you know, Hulu. What's happening?
Yeah. I love the offer because the first movie I worked on when I came into this town was Godfather 2. So I knew all the players and I was like riveted. I just watched the entire time. Of course, at the beginning, I thought that Bob Evans should be played by Miles Teller.
Miles Teller. But did you change your mind?
I changed my mind.
Yeah, right. I know. It's such a great
Bob Evans kind of grew on me slowly, and you know, but the beginning I thought because they're both tan, because of those. Anyway, so how did the deal come about? I'm curious. Who started it?
Well, so when I got the job, Jim Giannopoulos said to me, your main job is to protect the crown jewels. I was like, what are you even talking about? And then like once a week, I would get some call from either random people or like members of the Coppola family or, you know, actors from the movie or various people saying, hey, did you know you had the rights to The Godfather? I was like, yeah, I know. And so they'd come in and I'd have to hear their pitch for Godfather 4, which honestly, like, I'd rather, you know, lay on the tracks than that's just too daunting.
Yes.
And so I got a call. So my job was to manage those relationships and make everyone feel good and heard, but, you know, for myself, not have to go down that road of something where I think like it wouldn't be up to the legacy. And so I got a call saying Al Ruddy wants to see you. And I thought, they said he produced The Godfather. And I said, I thought Bob Evans produced The Godfather. And I looked it up on IMDb and it says Bob Evans and then parentheses uncredited executive producer. That's because Bob Evans told everybody, he made it part of his narrative that he produced The Godfather, right? And after The Godfather, he did, spoiler alert, get a 5-picture deal while he was president of the studio. But his whole thing was like obsession with producing. but Al was one of the last sole producers to win the Academy Award. Again, spoiler alert, although you should all know this anyway. But he came in and he was just talking to me, kind of doing his, not unlike Bob had done with me, kind of telling their Kid Stays in the Picture stories. And I was like, I had one of those moments where I was like, wait a second, you're the story. Like, you're the story. Like, we should do the story of you. And this is, and so I went to Jim and I said, I would never touch it, but I have this idea. I think it could be this big event limited series. Paramount Plus didn't exist yet. And as rebranded Paramount Plus, it was CBS All Access. And we kind of had an inkling that was going to happen, but I was like, this could be great, but I wasn't working there. I was just doing the studio. And so I said, I know who I want to write it. I want Michael Tolkien, who did The Player. I know him. I'm just going to call him. Nobody will know. If the script is terrible, I'll throw it in the trash. But if it's good, I need your blessing. And I need you, because he was like my godfather in this. I said, I'm going to need you to call Francis and like, let me know that it's okay to, not that it was Francis's approval and wasn't his story ultimately, but Jim had that relationship, and, I wouldn't do anything to that relationship without Francis being fine. So the script came in and he just nailed it. He nailed his pitch. He nailed his, thing, and Michael was amazing. And so then I sold it to Julie McNamara, and it was one of those ones that was kind of running where, I was obsessed with it. It had to be great, because if it wasn't, I felt like I had to leave the planet, since it was The Godfather. So I was like in every music session, I think my team were like, she's so controlling. We can't stand her when it comes to this show. But
so Julie McNamara, where was she?
Oh, Julie was at CBS All Access. So when it was CBS All Access, she was the head of the development and head of I don't remember exactly. I think she's an EVP.
I forgot about CBS All Access.
Yeah, but it quit, and then it all morphed, and then ultimately I went over, and so I was able to do both jobs and extra control it. But so then we developed it, and Nikki Toscano, who is amazing, is a showrunner, because Michael wasn't a showrunner. She came in and they put a room together. They broke the rest of it. And Dexter Fletcher, who'd done Rocket Man for us, did the first block. Adam Arkin is our unsung hero, who did 4 episodes of it and just absolutely like blew my mind. And Dexter's amazing too, but Adam was like, he was just able to really make it visual and figure out ways to do things creatively. How do you tackle the Academy Awards, right? And he did it in a really visual way. But that's how that happened. It's the thing was the most obsessed with, like living, breathing, sleeping, and the thing I'm the most proud of so far in like 32 years. So I will not, like, you should make me just shut up, because I'll just keep talking about it, because I love it so much.
No, I had Al in the Q&A when I just started like 12 years ago. And the student just stood up and applauded him, because he's just so captivating, and his story of what happened and how he went to Paramount New York and, all of that.
Yeah.
Anyway, I think it's fantastic. Anyway, I think I'm going to open up to the student questions, because it's for them.
Yeah.
And Mike, do we have questions from the students?
We do. We have a question here from Miguel DeCampo from our LA campus. Miguel, we've enabled you to unmute yourself. What is your question for Nicole?
Hello, can you hear me?
I can. Hi, Miguel.
Hi, nice to meet you. My question is, given that streaming companies are looking for more content for the platforms, what would you suggest for new filmmakers to do in order to pitch their ideas to these platforms or producers?
Well, for platforms and studios, there's what's called an unsolicited material situation, where they're not able to legally accept submissions directly from you. So what you have to do is either find a producer, which is possible, but also I think the easiest, best route are managers, and because they tend to be on the front line, finding and looking for new talent, or agents, and finding agents and a manager. And look, I'm going to give you the speech that I give all like undergrad class, or people that are like this, anytime I'm speaking to people that are about to be in the industry and wondering how to make that happen. This whole business is relationships, and it's cream will rise. If you have the great thing, it will find a way, but it's all 6 degrees of separation. So if you have a cousin that has a friend that works at CAA, and you can get your cousin to read your script or watch your short, and you can get them to give it to their friend who's the assistant at CAA and get them to do it, then they can say to their agent that they work for, hey, I saw this really great thing. Everybody in Hollywood, despite the unsolicited thing, everybody wants to find the next big thing. So it's really a matter of like figuring out who you know that knows someone that knows someone. Like I didn't grow up in the business, but my dad's friend knew someone who knew a writer who'd worked on Curb, or it wasn't even Curb, it was Larry David show. And he agreed to have lunch with me. And that was how I got my foot in the door. So it's like, it's figuring out. And by the way, that kind of figuring out and connecting, this whole business is sales ability and story sense. And you cannot teach either. You have it or you don't. If you don't have it, just go do something else because it'll be miserable. Whatever job you're in, whether you're a writer, whether you're a studio president, whether you're an agent, a manager, a producer, you are selling. I am selling at my level up. I'm selling down to you to come to me. I'm selling internally to my colleagues to get on board. I'm selling to Jim to let me do the offer, So it's all, and it's having an instinct for like, what's a good story. And I think you can absolutely boost yourself by reading everything and studying your favorite films and doing all that. But you have to be able to recognize, like, have a gut instinct and trust your gut instinct of what will work and have taste. The rest is just literally knowing people. Like, go get a job at an agency as an assistant, get to know all those people, and then share your film with them, right? Like you build all these relationships, all those people in a matter of very short years. And when you're a student, it feels like it's like forever. It's going to be 5 minutes from now. Your class are going to be in the business and they're going to be going places. And some people will rise like that. Some people will move laterally for all, but you'll know all these people, get them to watch your stuff. And if it's great, it will get discovered. I promise.
Great. Thank you very much.
And make friends with all the other assistants because all of you will rise at the same time.
Exactly.
We have another question here. This one's from Renata Torres. Renata, we've enabled you to unmute yourself. What is your question for Nicole?
Hello. Hi, Nicole. This is Renata. I'm from Brazil and I was in the LA campus. I want to know, with streaming changing how companies can be global, have this global presence, I would love to hear what you think. If this means more opportunities for foreigner productions, how do you see possibilities of like diversifying the industry and the challenges?
Oh, I think I think we were already headed towards globalization, and then COVID massively sped it up. If there was a statistic, gosh, and I'm not going to remember where I read it, but it was a Netflix statistic. They put it out that I think 94% of their customers had seen a subtitled show or film, which is a staggering statistic considering 6-7 years ago, 8 years ago, whatever, when I was at FX, we were like, we're doing The Bridge. It's set on the border. Should we do subtitles? Should we not? Will people watch it? Will it turn them off? I mean, you wouldn't even think about it now. Narcos blew that out of the water. Squid Game works because it has the algorithm and the subscriber base of Netflix, but like, look at how it just caught on. Nobody was like, my kids weren't, and God, I'm a terrible mother. They watched it before I knew what it was, but they weren't like, oh, it's a Korean show. They were like, it's a good show. So content that has like skyrocketed. And so I think that's great for a local, artist to be able to get into a system through, a Brazilian show that either becomes a format for other shows or takes off on its own if it's on the right platform or has more access. Because all of us, I mean, I'm here obviously, but like tons of execs have descended all over the world. Netflix went everywhere and satellited, Amazon, Apple, and they're looking for you, which was not the case when I started. It was sort of this foreign co-productions were this thing over here and the sales guys did it and they went to MIP and I had never been to MIP, but now it's just literally all just conjoined. And again, what I said is, when you have a need for more content with all this like gaping maw of streaming, you have to look internationally. And also most of these companies are hitting penetration domestically. So they're all looking at like what the future is, the international subscription. So international, audiences want authenticity. So they want their shows they want them to be the level of the shows that they're seeing in the US, and they want them to be authentic. And then that is creating an opportunity for those shows to get seen here and get discovered. That's a long-winded answer, but I hope it.
Excellent.
I don't think
Super interesting. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. I'm going to try to give a one-word answer next time to lower my average of monologuing.
No, no.
We have a question here from Matt Povia from our New York campus. Matt, we've enabled you to unmute yourself. What is your question for Nicole?
Hi, Nicole. Big fan of Evil, by the way.
Oh, it's good, isn't it? Wait till
Oh my
you.
God, I'm obsessed with it now.
Good.
You know. Anyway, I'm a little bit nervous, but writer actually get a script into the hands of somebody at Paramount, for instance, and they were interested in it, and it was for a pilot. Now, since I am this, I would never expect them to let me, show run my own show, nor would I even probably want to. I'd be terrified. But is there a way to keep myself attached so that I could learn the process of even just becoming a staff writer?
Well, there's a whole, it used to be that you would never have had the opportunity to make your own show as a young writer. You would have written a spec episode of a show that was on broadcast television, and you would have worked your way up and you would have learned the craft. Years ago, God, it's been, Tova, what's it been, like 15 years or so, that the ceiling was sort of broken through of, in a need for so much more content, younger creators were able to write spec pilots or, find a book or put something together and like do their material without having like worked their way up. What I would tell you is it's totally possible to stay on, and you should change your expectation to be, I want to stay on my show and I want to have a training wheels person who's going to teach me how to run my show, not just default to like, please just like make me a staff writer, because the opportunity is you could, and it depends on you, your skill set, who you are as a person. I mean, a showrunner is more than a writer. A showrunner is a producer. A showrunner is a general. A showrunner has to have all this other skill set, and people have to know who they are. Like, there are some people that are never going to be a showrunner and maybe just want to sit in their room and write and create. And, you have to kind of figure out like what you're capable of. Some people like, I was actually going to should name a name. One person can only do one show at a time. J.J. Abrams can do multiple shows at a time, right? So it's like, you have to kind of, and trial and error it and figure it out. You don't need to decide it, but you kind of have to be honest with yourself about who you are. But when let's say you had a hot script, right? And somebody wanted to buy it. And let's say you had multiple producers or platforms or studios bidding on it. One of the things you're going to want to talk to them about is, who would you put me with? And get with that person early in the process, because you want to have some level of control while you control the material and the leverage to know who they're going to partner with you with. Because I've had people partner, I've seen, as a former agent, as someone who's married to a writer, I've seen people get partnered with people that try to take over their shows. I've seen people get partnered with people that are truly, like on The Americans, Joe Weisberg had never run a show, and Joel Field was one of those amazing guys. And he came in with Josh Brand to support Joe, and now they are partners. And it was this incredible marriage, and they stayed all the way through. Some people, like in the case of my husband, his first show was Dominion, and they partnered him. He got to produce his own pilot with the director, which is super rare. Then they partnered him with showrunners, and then he took over for the next season. He was able to, he just had that showrunner thing. So it runs the gamut. And then I think also, if you think you're going to get a show going, find a way to get yourself into the showrunner trainee program and immerse yourself. And because that's an invaluable program through the WGA. You have to be nominated, but you'll have enough people that can, and they want to take people that are about to be showrunners. They're looking for people that are trying to grow into it. But who you get involved with, you should definitely not make money decisions solely. Make decisions about who are these are long running shows. You need to get in with the right partners, or it can be a very quick sort of, well, that was like I saw this thing and they kicked me off, so you want to know like who, these are your collaborators. Television, especially, is a very collaborative medium. Who are you getting into bed with?
Awesome. Thanks so much.
God, I wish I knew that. Okay.
We have a question here from Priscilla Oferiwa. Priscilla, we've enabled you to unmute yourself. What is your question for Nicole?
Okay, hi, good evening. Hi, Nicole. Priscilla from Ghana. So congratulations on all of your achievements. It's really good to hear a woman climb up such heights. And so I just wanted to find out, I believe there are so many challenges that you encountered growing up, and if you'd be kind enough to share some with us, and so we are able to better prepare ourselves for what's ahead of us. Thank you.
Gosh, it's interesting. I think part of, and I'm not saying this is a good thing, part of one of the ways that I think I was able to succeed in that era was that I just put my blinders on, because I was playing in the sandbox of the frat house with boys and I was competing with them. And I mean, stuff that would just absolutely not fly today just it didn't occur, because it's almost like you don't know what's acceptable until someone says like, that's not acceptable behavior. So I was fortunate to not ever find myself in my own Me Too story, but I definitely witnessed and, experienced, kind of like, well, she's at the table and she's sort of representing the female race, you know what I mean? Kind of thing, like that vibe, not conscious, but just kind of like those little things when you look back and you're like, oh, there was a conversation here and then there was another conversation here, right? And honestly, I don't know if it's my force of personality. I just like pushed in. I just pushed myself right up to the table and pushed in. And I think today it's a different story. I mean, there's so much more runway support, focus on diversification and safe environments and safe work environments. And so I think, I hope that I only afterwards look back and I was like, oh yeah, that wasn't really appropriate. I had very thick skin. And I hope you don't have to experience that, but because I think that the changes that have happened in recent years are fantastic. And obviously there's always more work to do, but it should hopefully create more opportunities.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
We have a question here from Jumana Abdul. Jumana, we've enabled you to unmute yourself. What is your question for Nicole?
Hi, Nicole. Thank you so much for being here. I had graduated from NYFA last year in the MFA filmmaking program, and I'm wondering, when applying for careers in development or executive roles at Paramount, would you recommend having script notes or coverage samples prepared?
I think what's going to happen is, if you are interviewing for development, they'll probably give you, if you're moving up, they'll give you scripts to cover. They'll want you to cover script that they know so that they can, God, it brings me back to a horror story. I was up for a job at Disney on this movie. You guys are all too young to remember. Tova, do you remember Dumbo Drop?
Of course.
So I'm hearing me, and I want to be a story editor. Actually, I want to move from TV to film. And back then, if you were in TV, it was like, oh, sorry, you're in TV. You're just kind of dumb. You're not really as cool as film people. And so it's all flipped now. But I was trying to get the job. She gave me these script notes and I was like, I hated that movie. And and I basically was like, my notes just destroyed it. And I was like, you should do this and do this. And she was like, I really like you. I want to hire you, but your notes are terrible. Not to scare you. It worked out for me in the end. But most people will give you their own stuff to cover. You can apply through, most websites will have open job postings and you can apply. And also, again, this goes back to what I was saying in the first question. It's, you just come here, be here, take temp jobs, take waitering jobs, tell everyone this is what you want to do, get to know people and find out like who has the, who knows somebody at HR at the various agencies or studios or, and by the way, doing a year on a desk in an agency, even if you don't want to be an agent, even if you want to be in development, is absolutely invaluable. I didn't do it. And I was at a deficit because agents sit at the epicenter and you want to be on a lit agent's desk, or you could do talent, but I think lit would be best if you want to be in development. You're going to start to learn who all these writers are. You're going to see by how people in development and producers work with agencies and do it in the wrong way. And what's the best way to do it? Plus, you're going to meet all these people that when you get out there, because all these assistants become writers, they become directors, they become producers, they become all these other things. And then your network is just born. It's like being, and I say this, and I was not in a fraternity or a sorority, nor would I ever be, but it's kind of like its own fraternity or own grad school. So it's really important. And it's like paid grad school, you know, and obviously don't work for anyone abusive, but it pays massive, massive dividends. And then when I hire a development assistant, if they have a year at an agency, I know that they can handle a really heavy desk. I know that they can tough it out in terms of like rigorous. I also know they know the business, because I don't want to hire someone just necessarily. It's harder for me to hire someone off the street that doesn't know who Tova Laiter is or doesn't know who, because when you're on that desk and you're getting ground down into like, it's just insane hours, what you're getting is all this software that you're downloading into your hardware. And you're just like, you have to know that that's what's in it for you, that you're seeing all these contracts, you're seeing these deals, you're seeing these names, who are the players, who are the people. Back in the old days, in the covered wagon days where Tova and I grew up, you used to have to drive around and deliver scripts, and you could meet directors and you could meet studio heads and you could meet people because you had to deliver their scripts. Al Ruddy, and he'll take you in and talk to you for 6 hours. Right. So that was a great thing. That doesn't happen anymore. So now it's just absorbing that information and reading everything you can get your hands on. And that will make you not only get you in the door for a development job that you want, but probably get you promoted faster.
Yes. You mentioned that there's a right way to work with the agent and a wrong way. Can you expand on it a little bit?
Yeah. Let's say you're in your first development job and you're a low-level executive and you're calling a mid-level or low-level agent because you need a writer's list, and to call them and be like, I have this thing and I need some people. Right? So like, what I responded to is, if somebody called me up and they said they might be wanting my A-list person, right? And they can call me and ask for that person, but they need to know who all the other people are, right? So that they're like, hey, there's no better way to an agent's heart than to say that you saw their client's thing, read their client's thing, call them and be like, oh my God, I saw the offer. I love the offer. You know, Nikki Toscano is a genius. I know she really, I understand the business. Like, no, I know she came in and ran that. And she like really, she's kind of the unsung hero who like pulled that thing through. She's great. Is she available? Oh, she's not. She's in an overall deal at Paramount. Oh, okay. I'm at Sony. I need somebody like her. I have this thing and I need somebody like her. And then it's like, then they know what you want, and you don't have to say, you don't have to call them about someone that's just like your person, but you want them to feel like you know who they are. You're not just like literally going, hey, can you do some extra work for me and put together a list? Put your own list together and call and say, is this person available? Is this person available? And when they start to see, oh, this is what you're looking for, and you're shooting high, then they're gonna be like, you know, the next John Logan is this guy, right? And so that's one way. The other way is read their stuff and get back to them and respond, you know, because they've got clients on the other end of the phone. And I think one of the secrets that I have, having been an agent, is I know because my job is now passing all the time as a buyer, is when I call somebody and their project and I call an agent, I know that they've got this. I was married to a writer, so I know they're sitting at home just like holding their breath, waiting to hear from someone. I explain to them why it's not for us, so that they have something to say to their client, because they're worried about losing their client all the time. So they need to look like they understand that they tried, that this is why it's not going to happen. So I try to give them context. I try to empathize. By the way, empathy is like the best thing to have in this business, to empathize for what position everybody's in, you know, and to think about it from their point of view, and how can you help them? How can you be of service to them? I think agents get a bad rap for being just predatory and callous and, you know, like used car salesmen, which is what I thought they were, which is why I turned down ICM for 6 months. But the truth is, like I said, the best agents are producers with a paycheck. And if you respect them that way and you listen to their ideas, and if they say, hey, have you heard of this director? And you haven't, watch it. Even if you're like, oh, it's not right. Don't be like, oh, it wasn't right for my project, and then never call them again. Call them back and say, I watched it. It's not right for our project. My God, this guy's amazing. I'd love to meet, and I'd love to bring it to my boss and have my boss come in. Let me tell you, nobody's doing that. I'm giving you the keys to the kingdom. If you did that, and people start talking about people in staff meetings, agents talk about executives in staff meetings, they'll be like, you know, wow, that girl over at Red Wagon is amazing. And she's a story editor and she's amazing. And like, we got to have lunch with her. Let's get to know her. And all of a sudden they're sending you the good stuff. You have to figure out what your brand is, and your brand is relationships, and your brand is your taste. So people won't know your taste if you don't tell them and respond to them and be honest. If you're like, I don't really like that. It wasn't for me. I more respond to this. You can't just be a sycophant, but it's recognizing that it goes both ways, I think, is really a good way to think about agents.
But I think, Nicole, everything that you said is just so valuable, and not that many people get back to people right now. In our time, they used to call, on the Monday after the weekend read and say, we're not doing your script, and then you say, why not? And people explain, and at least you have it. A lot of the time now, it just goes to some black hole because people don't want to put anything on the internet. And
they want to text. I like to text. I'm a total guilty texter. We've got too much going on. I think our phones have ruined us, and everybody thinks they have to be, we've not made our lives efficient. We've made our lives a living hell, but too much stuff. But so if you're the person that is actually, it lets you, this is an opportunity to stand out, just having common decency, basically.
Having what?
Common decency.
Decency. I know. And people start recognizing it's both ways. They recognize who is the executive that, is going to get back to you and, have some empathy. Whether it's a very short phone call from Sherry, it used to be, what can I do for you? To even texting or writing an email or calling and saying, this is the reason why. It's fun.
And by the way, if you have relationships with agents, or you want relationships with agents, let's say their film does well, or their client's involved in a film that does well in the box office, send them a note.
Yes.
Handwrite a note to them. I mean, nobody gets handwritten notes anymore. Right. That will single you out.
Yeah. Fantastic. Okay. One more question. And then I have a couple of more questions to ask. My privilege.
We have a question from Jacqueline Powell. Jacqueline, we've enabled you to unmute yourself. What is your question for Nicole?
Hi, Nicole. Thank you so much for your time, both of you, Tevye and Nicole. My question is, if you write what you think is a great pilot with great characters for a long-running series, how many episodes would you recommend writing to go with the pilot? And do you recommend writing full episodes or just outlines?
I wouldn't write a second episode. I would write a pilot, and then I might do, depending on what it is, a format, and so that people understand what the show is. But I'll tell you, if you're writing a pilot, make sure your pilot is a thesis statement for the show, not the first act of a movie.
Great.
I mean, I think the best pilots, I'm speaking about premium cable streaming, are the second act of a movie. You jump in, you crash in, and you have to ask yourself, like, hey, who are the main characters? Geographically, where am I? How can I emotionally connect to my main character? And then how can I leave that pilot with a character question, not a cliffhanger of, is the person going to jump off the cliff, but is like, I'll give you the best example, Mad Men. You follow this character all the way through. You've met these other characters, and John Hamm walks into his bedroom and he's got a family. And you're like, what?
Yeah.
I have to come back and see what that guy's going to do. You guys should see The Shield. If you haven't seen The Shield, it's like become dated reference now, but like Vic Mackey kills the guy that you think is the protagonist of the show. And you're like, oh my God, what is this? There's always a character inciting incident in the pilot that tells you that there's a long arcing story. So many people write a premise pilot. My first day on the job, my first day coming into this, you want to crash in because people are too sophisticated now and storytelling's too sophisticated and there's too much available. You want to crash in, and people want to, in those mediums, they want to work a little bit. Maybe not as hard as we had to work in Game of Thrones for the first 4 episodes, not knowing what the hell was going on. Not everybody is Game of Thrones and had like HBO, and you give HBO 4 episodes before you decide. Everybody else gets 1 episode before they decide if they're sticking with the show, especially with 7,000 shows in the marketplace. So you have to reach out by the throat and grab them. So if you do that, you don't need to write any other episodes to sell it. The most I would do would be a series document or a format that talks about like, what is it thematically that you're talking about? What's the journey that you're taking your character on over the course of the series, right? Breaking Bad, teacher to drug kingpin. He cooks meth in the pilot, so he's going to be dead or in jail. But the question, it's MacGyver, right? Like he's basically like, telling us, I'm doing it for that. His family he's got cancer. So he wants to set his family up. So he justifies this move. And he's like, I'm doing it for them. I'm doing it for them. I'm doing it for them. And then the character evolution over the journey of Breaking Bad is finally when he says, I did it for me. Because what he really wanted, Walter White wanted, was power. It was a big lie. He was doing it for him. And then once he does that, the second to last episode of the series, you're like, oh my God, I'm so satisfied. And then the finale is just MacGyver of how he, gets out of it. Or it doesn't. I'm not going to ruin it for you. So,
I've seen it.
It's just, you want character journeys, not plot. Just if you know where you're taking your character, you can build both ends of a bridge, find the middle. You can always back solve. What is my character supposed to be doing? Plot wise, you can ask yourself what character journey I'm on and figure out what they should do.
Great, thank you. That's so wonderful, because I was thinking of going the plotting route of introducing each one of the characters in there, but now I have an opening that is like a riot. It's a huge riot, and I have a way that I think is a better way to introduce the characters, and that all the other characters are on a TV screen in the middle of this event that's happening. And I think that's kind of like almost like a hook and an exciting opening, but I wasn't sure. I'm stuck with how many episodes do I have to write, anyway, but thank you so very much. It's very, very helpful. I did watch all of Breaking Bad for that, and I just wrote down The Shield. I'll get the pilot script for that and take a look at that. Thank you very much.
Sure.
Okay. So let me ask you something. How do you measure success in streaming? There's the Netflix and there's the subscriber, right? The HBO, the Paramount Plus.
This is, you asked me at the beginning, Tova, you're like, what's a question that you're not going to want to answer? Is that your trick? You ask that question and then ask that question. No. Every streaming service has a different metrics, like Nielsen ratings for network television and cable television. They're it's like very clear. It's a very standardized thing.
Yes.
For streaming, every streamer values different things. The street, meaning Wall Street, is valuing different things. So that changes how people value streaming, right? Is it, there's many different categories. There's engagement, there's completion ratio, there's acquisition. Does your show have people sign up? There's all these various things. So I can't disclose our metrics, but I will tell you the reason why there isn't a standardized thing is each place has a different way to judge it, different metrics. What would be a success another place would probably not be a success at another place. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And when you don't believe everything you read from places, when they're like, it's like you have to take it with a grain of salt, like read between the lines, like what is that or what is that? It's a success when they renew your show. That's basically.
I love that. Yeah, I have another question. I just recently watched Owen Wilson in the movie Secret Headquarters. Is that a YA? Do you consider that an YA film? Is it a family film? It's right?
I don't do the movies. So Brian Robbins, who does the films,
was the director on Varsity.
There you go. Director. So they program the film straight to the streaming films. Exactly. So I don't know what they categorized it under, but that's the team that it came out of.
So that's interesting because I saw it on Paramount Plus. And
finally, so Paramount Plus, I do the original scripted hours and half hours. Then you have documentaries, which I don't do, just the scripted.
I see. What do you think is your quality that contributed the most to your success? What is the quality you have that contributed the most to your success?
Probably tenacity, right? Like taking a no and turning it into a yes. And it's so much rejection. This business is so, right? It's like, it's all rejection, and you just have to believe in what you believe and not care what other people think and just go and go and go and go and go. And then also because when you're an agent, you can sell a script for $1 gazillion. but it's never a win because you have all these other clients that are unhappy that you didn't sell their script for $1 million. And then you have the client who wishes you sold it for $10 million because someone else sold something for $10 million. You have to be like, you just have to be excited about what you're doing and passionate about what you're doing and believe in what you're doing and just keep going.
Amazing. I want to tell you, I think that I can measure the success of what you did here because I look at the participants and the number of participants, and usually you start with some people and then some people leave and some people leave. It stayed the entire time.
I like your metrics. Thanks for being transparent about your metrics.
So that is a measurement of a very, very successful and valuable advice that the student get, merit of. And believe me, I learn from all my guests also. There's never a thing where you totally know everything. You really learn from everybody. I want to thank you so much for showing up. It shows a lot of character too, because the very successful people say, I'll do it, and they're doing it. You know what I mean? Yeah. Spielberg said, I'm going to do it. And he was doing Lincoln, and he was doing this series, and he was doing that, and then and that, and he did it. And so it's just, this is what I see in very successful people. The word is their word. They committed, they commit, they do it, and then they move on, and it doesn't drag on, and it's not hee-haw, and so on and so forth. So I want to thank you so much for taking your time, especially during the day, hundreds of phone calls waiting, and it's like, is the star going to do my movie? Is his agent leaving in 5 minutes? And I missed it. And really were 100% present. And I want to thank you.
My pleasure. My pleasure. Great to see you.
It really was incredible.
Well, thank you guys. Good luck with everything. I'll see you out on the playing field. I know you'll be there soon.
Bye.
Bye.